Chapter 10b. Genres. Here we look at special types of film, some of which are more popular than others in both movies and television. Westerns have been popular since the beginning of film, from the Great Train Robbery in 1906 through the silent era and into sound. Westerns offer action and adventure in wide open spaces that especially appeal to those in crowded cities. They are exotic yet familiar. Director John Ford had already been making Western films since the silent era, like The Iron Horse, but made his best films after World War II, when he left his contract at 20th Century Fox. He worked with some of the biggest box office stars of his time: John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda. Genre films, which were not often taken seriously because they can be rather formulaic, were suddenly trend-setting and award-worthy, especially in Ford's manipulation of Technicolor. The Searchers, made in 1956, is considered one of the most beautiful color films ever made, yet received no Academy Award nominations, not even for cinematography. And at that time, there were even separate awards for color and black and white films. Ridiculous! Ford was doing brilliant things with color, but then made The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance 6 years later in black and white to accentuate the sense of barren landscape. John Wayne was cast with Jimmy Stewart, who was also in 5 westerns directed by Anthony Mann. Playing morally flawed heroes helped Stewart transition from being typecast as a comic actor. In the 1930s and 40s, Jimmy Stewart played in both romantic and screwball comedies, from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and You Can't Take It With You to The Philadelphia Story and The Shop Around the Corner. After making westerns with Mann and Ford, Stewart worked with Alfred Hitchcock in Rear Window and Vertigo. Westerns fit the classical Hollywood narrative style because any sense of chaos is brought back to order by the end of the film. Spoofs of the Western genre were popular in the late 60s and early 70s, though I don't know that I agree with your textbook that Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is a spoof so much as a Western comedy. You may know that this is where the Sundance Film Festival gets its name, because Robert Redford founded the Sundance Institute in Utah and named it after the character, the Sundance Kid, that he played. Blazing Saddles, however, by Mel Brooks, that is a spoof, and one of the best spoofs ever made. Finally, Sergio Leone. American directors were interested in the work of their European contemporaries, as we'll see in Chapter 11, but the reverse was also true. Italian director Sergio Leone cast a barely known TV actor named Clint Eastwood for this trilogy: The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, A Fistful of Dollars, and For a Few Dollars More. And from that success, he made Once Upon a Time in the West with Henry Fonda, which set a new standard for the genre for how it looks, how it sounds, and what it says. Film noir, which carries over from the 1940s, is a type of mystery or detective film. They are bleak, yet stylish, cynical, yet sophisticated, usually in black and white, usually in urban settings. They are similar to the hard-boiled style of crime novel. It's not a whodunit where a single murder is solved by a clever sleuth, but instead a flawed hero stumbles from one crime to another to piece together a puzzle. Fritz Lang, who had been part of the silent German expressionist movement in the 1920s and made both Metropolis and M before moving to the United States, turned to film noir with films like The Big Heat. In this film, a policeman bends the law to get revenge for his wife's death. This is a standard storyline now, but in 1953 it was a big shift. By 1971's Dirty Harry, directed by Don Siegel, we can believe that an officer of the law might be a loose cannon without morals. Do you feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk? Musicals did well in the 1950s and 60s because they were based on successful Broadway shows. Oklahoma, South Pacific, West Side Story, The Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, whereas now successful musicals are based on films. Spamalot, based on Monty Python's The Holy Grail, Once, or Kinky Boots. Vincent Minnelli, father of Liza, had directed her mother, Judy Garland, in 1944 in Meet Me in St. Louis, but spent the 1950s with more dance-driven musicals like An American in Paris with Gene Kelly and The Bandwagon with Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse. He also directed Gigi with Leslie Caron and Maurice Chevalier, which was really the last of its kind for about 50 years until Chicago in 2002. Comedies ranged from light, like romantic comedies with Doris Day or Sandra Dee, or dark, like Billy Wilder's The Apartment. Doris Day played the wholesome girl next door with Rock Hudson in Pillow Talk, and with Cary Grant in That Touch of Pink, and James Garner in The Thrill of It All. Likewise, Sandra Dee played wholesome teenagers, or ingenues, in The Reluctant Debutante and Gidget, before it was a TV series with Sally Field. In The Apartment, Shirley MacLaine is having an affair with a married man, and in Breakfast at Tiffany's, Audrey Hepburn's Holly Golightly is a socialite with a questionable past. Both films are characterized by a certain level of cynicism, but they also feature realistic people with flaws rather than ideals. Finally, melodramas. Before they were called chick flicks, they were called melodramas. Yes, that is an oversimplification, but melodramas often had overblown problems in repressive environments. People tormented by the feelings they couldn't control. Add to this a fundamental misunderstanding of sexuality and mental health at a societal level, and you have stereotypical characters in highly emotional states of mind. Douglas Sirk was very successful with All That Heaven Allows, where a wealthy widow cannot bear the shame of marrying a man she loves who happens to be a gardener. And instead she chooses to be miserable. In 2002, Todd Haynes made a similarly themed film with Julianne Moore called Far From Heaven, which was set in the 1950s. But in this case, the woman is married to a closeted man, and the gardener is not white. Now that is a story. Sirk was especially appreciated for his elaborate mise-en-scène, or design, anything placed on the scene. Art direction is the award. Costumes are for people, art direction is for stuff. Melodramas also took place among disaster films, like Airport or The Poseidon Adventure. Think of the TV show Lost. We're trapped on this island, but which man am I attracted to, Jack or Sawyer? Or in reaction to incurable illness, like in Love Story, where a beautiful young woman succumbs to cancer. The line everyone takes away is, love means never having to say you're sorry. Well, does it, punk?